Hello, everybody. Welcome into The Cycle. I am Ryan Wormeli, joined today not by Mike Mayer. He is off doing, I think, some kind of recovery from some minor whatever thing. He's fine. He's not here, though. He always gives me a hard time when I'm not here, so I will return the favor in kind. I am joined, as he's usually joined when I'm gone, by the one and only Kelly Kirby. Kelly, thanks for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's nice to do this with you instead of him, but we kind of are the surgical triplets, aren't we? Like, us and our procedures are just constantly
There's always something.
Yes.
You know, we're never able to avoid whatever. I actually, it's not even I'm trying to, protect his private, business. I don't actually even know what he's got going on. I just know he's out for some minor thing. So he'll be back next week. I will actually be gone next week for a family trip. So you will be filling in again back on the other side. You will unfortunately be stuck with Mayer again next week. But this week we get the rare Worm and Kelly show. Really, we could call it the zoo. It's Worm and Penguin together. So we got some animals going on here.
That
we're
would
talking.
be a terrible zoo, by the way.
Oh yeah, I mean, who would go to see a worm? I guess like they have like little worm farms at some of like the little bug exhibits. Like,
Yeah.
like I think like my nephew might enjoy that. Kids like bugs, but as a general zoo, exhibit, I don't think that would be that impressive. But yeah, we're gonna be talking, kind of, doing what we usually do here. We're gonna be rounding the bases with some trending topics. We've got a fun little thing kind of at the end of rounding the bases. Actually, I'm hoping will be kind of the bulk of the segment where Kelly will be going through some of her lessons learned so far 2 months into the 2025 fantasy baseball season. Kelly obviously knows a lot more about fantasy baseball than I do, and I would say that more than Mayer does too. Although that is not necessarily reflected in the standings in Dan Harris's league, which you are also in, and I like to bring up because Mayer is in last place there. You, Kelly, are in second to last place, so I get to kind of hold that over both of you guys for the time being in my first season in the league. But we'll be doing those lessons learned from Kelly. We'll be also talking, like I said, some trending topics, some news, notes, and injuries, all that good stuff. And as always, this is part one of 3 parts of the cycle for the week, so be sure to check out not only this episode. If you're watching this will be the first one to drop, both on audio and video, but also the other couple of segments as well throughout the weekend. All right, Kelly, let's dive in. I wanted to kind of just start with, this is from a couple of days ago, obviously, but Ronald Acuna coming back like on fire. Obviously, a couple of huge home runs in that weekend series. His first time back coming off of, yet another long, time being out due to injury. We talked a lot, Mayer and myself, in the preseason about where we ranking Acuna this year because once he's back, we're going to really want him in our rosters. He was a little slower coming back the last time he was coming back from a torn ACL. Obviously, it's still early, it's very small sample size in 2025, but certainly a great start, to begin with for him. So I wanted to kind of just pose the question to you, like, A, initial thoughts on seeing him back in the field. Obviously, it's fun as fantasy managers to see him back. But B, now that he is back and looking like pretty much his old self, how many players are there in fantasy baseball that you would be ranking ahead of him rest of season?
Yeah, I mean, not many. I think right off the top of my head, I thought of Judge, unfortunately, because I'm usually a pretty big Aaron Judge denier. Ohtani, Corbin Carroll, maybe, given how he's been doing lately. But that is pretty much the list, I think, at this point, because if he continues what he's doing, I don't know where you put anyone else above him. However, that being said, if we're going with what do I see as the injury risk the rest of season, I would put a couple more people ahead of him, I think, just to I would still rather have Juan Soto than Acuna in terms of I think he'll be healthy and he's going to have a monster second half. But everything else Acuna brings to the table, and he's maybe a little fresher than everybody else, he's third, fourth, maybe.
Yeah, we weren't going to do a segment on Soto, but I'm glad you brought it up because there's been, headlines recently about like the Mets aren't worried about him and everything. And I'm like, listen, I get that the average is really low. It's 224 and the OBP is low for his standards, of course, at 352 right now, OPS under 800. Like it has been maybe worse than you would have expected. At the same time, like, I don't if we're putting together like we're going to be doing our buy lows in a future segment, like it's not like Juan Soto's a buy low, right? I think like most people are pretty reasonably confident that he's going to be, continuing to be a really valuable player. And also, by the way, he's stolen 7 bases and his career high is 12. So he's already over halfway there. We're not even, through May yet. So I think Soto is a good one to bring up because I tend to agree with you, like given just the kind of the looming sort of Damocles of Acuna's injury history looming over his head, like I would rather have some of these other guys ahead of him just for no other reason than that. But it sounded like, what'd you say, fourth? It was Judge, Ohtani, maybe Carroll, and that was about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's just kind of where I start. I mean, Bobby Witt is still there, but I'm not, the Royals lineup is around him isn't doing so hot, so I'm not necessarily in on his counting stats. But yeah, with Soto, I looked at him as a buy low because this is probably as low of a buy as you can get on him, right? If everything's relative, like this is the only time I can remember that you can buy low on Soto. But his expected stats, like his expected batting average, I think is around like 285 or something. His slug, everything should come back to normal. It's just waiting that out. And if you can find a manager who doesn't want to wait that out, jump on it.
Give it a try. Yeah.
Yeah.
With Acuna, what would you say if you had to put a percentage chance to it? Is the percentage chance that in February of 2026, next year, he is the number one overall pick? And I'll say, I'm not going to say like overwhelmingly like consensus number one pick because obviously Ohtani's amazing and Judge is having this awesome season, but that he is, I'll say, the consensus number one. Like in ECR, he is the number one guy. What percentage chance would you give Acuna being back there a year from now?
Yeah, I think it's really hard. I mean, I feel like we should always just drop Ohtani from the whole conversation because I feel like I just feel like he'll be the number one, like ECR. So I would give Acuna like almost 0% chance to be the ECR number one. But if we drop him out just for posterity's sake, then yeah, I mean, I think I would give it, I don't know, 60, 70%. I mean, pretty high. Like I'm not sure who would take over, like the Judge Witt combo, maybe Carroll, depending on how he finishes. Who else are you gonna like? Kyle Tucker, but like he's in his contract year, so I mean, I'm not expecting I'm not expecting as big of things next year from him. So yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty high if he stays healthy.
Last question on Acuna. Given some of the injury stuff that you alluded to, and the fact that whoever has him is probably like they probably don't want to trade him, obviously because they held on to him. They got him at this discount on draft day, and now is the time you get to kind of reap those benefits. If somebody is looking to maybe sell high and say, hey, he's back, but you never know, look at this great start, this is the Acuna of old, would you be willing to trade him for something like a guy that was going later in the first round in drafts or maybe a second rounder as part of a package? So something like Churio plus another player, or Gunnar Henderson, who's gotten off to a really slow start, plus another player. Somebody like that, would you be willing to move Acuna, or would it have to be kind of one of these elite, like have been playing like a stud type of studs, would be the only way you would move him?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is the best time to sell high because he's healthy. I mean, these are the rules. And if you wanted to, the first thought that I had is if I could get like a Skubal, Jackson Merrill combo, that's where I would start. But like if I could pull a number one starter out right now, given how pitching looks injury wise, maybe it's not everyone's pitching, it might just be my pitching across 8 leagues, but I need help. So yeah, I'd be okay with that, I think, depending on how you need to fill out your team.
We are currently giving away a Jose Ramirez signed Guardians jersey, courtesy of our friends at pristineauction.com. All you have to do to enter is to subscribe to the FantasyPros MLB YouTube channel right now. Drop a comment below on any video, and that is it. We will be announcing one lucky winner right here on the channel, so make sure to turn on those notifications so you can know when new videos are up and to claim your prize. Jose Ramirez, another name that could obviously be in that conversation, him versus Acuna. I think I'd probably rather take a Ramirez in the kind of that category of thinking about the injury stuff as well. One guy who might get to this level one day is our next topic here, Roman Anthony, and he's not called up yet as of we're recording this Thursday afternoon, but it just feels like he has to be close to call up. Jeff Passan actually had an article about both him and Jack Caglione in the Kansas City's organization. He had the article on ESPN today just kind of about like why aren't these guys up yet? Like there's some speculation of like Super 2 related stuff. There's the fact that the Red Sox, one of the examples that Jeff uses in his article is that Christian Campbell has been struggling, so you never know that how a top prospect is going to come up and make that instant impact. But at the same time, it just feels so obvious that Anthony has like nothing else to learn at the minor league level. He is the number one prospect in baseball, and I just feel like the kind of groundswell of conversation about him is coming to a tipping point, and I'm assuming he's going to be up soon. So I wanted to kind of just hit on I wanted people to be prepared in case it does happen, let's say in the next week before our next episode. I want people to be prepared with, what are we doing? Now, he's likely rostered in a lot of leagues just because the top prospect in baseball is going to be rostered in a lot of leagues. But is he somebody that you have such high expectations for right off the bat that you would be interested in trying to trade for now if you didn't roster him, or in the off chance he is available? Like, obviously I think you should pick him up, but would you be trying to trade for him now? Would you be trying to sell before he comes up and possibly disappoints? What are your general expectations for Anthony when he does get the call?
Well, I think one of the things that the Red Sox are doing is, they tried to change all of the rules for like the playing time manipulation situation, which once you get into this time of year with a guy like Anthony, that's your most that's Occam's razor, right? Like that's the most logical explanation. But yeah, I mean, I have pretty high expectations for him. I think he will jump kind of in and start off hot. I also think there's no clear Rookie of the Year in the American League, and I feel like that's another concern for Boston. That if they bring him up and he wins that, I think that they lose a year on him, I believe, or something along those lines. So I feel like that's the issue a little bit, is they're just kind of looking for how to best do this. But no, I think he's going to hit. But I also, unfortunately, subscribe to the Joe Pisapia rule, which is when they come up, that is the highest time to sell. Like once he gets the call, if there's something that you need, and it's not a dynasty league, that's the time to go. And if there's somebody, if you play in a league with a bunch of East Coast bias people, like, target them, because they're going to be probably way more excited than you are. So yeah, if I have him, I'm holding when he gets called up. If there's someone that's interested and there's a piece that I need, I basically never have trouble flipping rookies in redraft.
Especially recently, and again, this is something that I talk about a lot with Mayer, is, I mean, it is such a common thing to see play out now that these top prospects are taking longer than ever to adjust to the big leagues, because and there are exceptions, but by and large, it feels like the elite guys are not hitting the ground running the way we maybe got used to, 10 years ago. The gap in pitching between the minor leagues, the upper minor leagues even, and Major League Baseball is as wide as it's ever been. And in that article I referenced, Passan talks about Jackson Holliday as an example of just a year ago was the number one overall prospect in baseball in AL East organization, comes up and wasn't just like not living up to the hype, but was like so bad he had to get sent down in like 2 weeks. Like, was that bad at first? My usual takeaway from that is, okay, well, let's get the adjustment out of the way sooner rather than later and just, get through it.
Right.
But it does mean for fantasy managers, like, that has to be as good of a prospect as Roman Anthony is. That has to be in the back of your mind as a possible outcome here when you're looking at top prospects who are soon to be called up. You could throw Caglione in this conversation if you want to also. Do you think about all the prospects who have struggled, or do you try and look at each individual guy as this feels like the type of profile that maybe won't struggle as much? Because I think that can be tricky, because I probably would have said that with Holiday, for example, as this is the type of guy who maybe the ceiling isn't going to be crazy high right off the bat, but I thought he was a floor type of guy that wouldn't have that. I thought he was going to adjust really well, because that's what he had done his entire life. He had, dad is an all-star hitter. Like, it seemed like such an obvious, this guy's going to be a good baseball player right off the bat. And he wasn't. So do you just look at kind of the general whole and say, this guy probably isn't going to be the exception? Or do you say, like, oh, based on, Caglione's elite power or Anthony's overall profile, these guys seem like exceptions to the rule?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting question, because I don't know how you discern it, right? Like a couple years ago, there was a giant, like every rookie that came in, like lit the world on fire. And it was so much fun for everyone, because like now you had this young stud doing what you expected him to, but that's just not the norm. So in terms of like looking at it, I guess I have the way I kind of I think assess it is, what team are they playing on? How long of a leash are they going to be given? Because they can sometimes hit their way out of it, right? But they have to play every day, or almost every day. They have to be allowed to kind of work through, do the batting practice, talk to the veterans, and I think some organizations are just less likely to let that happen. Holiday last year, I mean, he was so atrocious that there was just no way that, I mean, at that point you start to talk about, killing his confidence. And considering that I thought he was like 12 years old when he got there, I'm like, well, you don't want to kill a 12-year-old's confidence. So send him back down for a minute. But yeah, Anthony, I think is just in a unique position because I feel like the Red Sox will give him that leash. Like, I think that they will let him hit his way out of it. But as the season goes on, and depending, I mean, the AL East is super competitive. I don't know if they'll leave, if he does come up and struggle for a while, like, will they leave that empty spot in the roster I feel like they're less likely. Whereas I think if Caglione gets up, the Royals will let him fly for pretty much the rest of the year.
I think that's your spot on. I think Caglione will, like, when he's up, he's going to be getting every day at bats. Like, I just don't see any way around it. Whereas Anthony, yeah, like, it's weird because, like, on the one hand, the Red Sox are in fourth place. They're below 500. But on the other hand, like you said, like, it is a really competitive, division for the most part. And, the Orioles aren't as good as expected. And the Blue Jays are also below 500. The Rays are only a game above 500. Like, there's room to make moves in the division. I wonder if on Boston's side it will be more, if they would be more inclined, like if Campbell was hitting really well, for example, and like if Bregman was healthy, like
Yeah.
they probably don't want Anthony in a position where he needs to be a star right away, where he kind of would need to be right now given the shape of that lineup. And I really wish Mayer was on this episode if we're talking poorly about Red Sox as an organization, but sadly he's not here. Let's go to our next topic here. This is kind of where we usually do our news, notes, and injuries. I didn't have a ton that I wrote down, just a handful of them. If you have any others that you saw, please feel free to join in with those as well. Ronald Blanco out for the year with Tommy John. Obviously, that's going to linger into next season as well. Somebody who's had some good stretches the last couple of years, but not going to be available anytime soon. Bo Bichette, day-to-day lower back tightness. He actually hit a home run yesterday, so clearly doing better in that regard. I wrote this down before the homer, but something to keep an eye on. I actually considered Bichette for buy low when we do that segment later on. I didn't end up picking him, but actually partially because of the injury stuff. I didn't want to pick a guy who was hurt. But I've been a Bichette fan for a lot of this year at his cost, so something to keep an eye on. I have a lot of him. Stephen Kwan left the game yesterday for the Guardians with right wrist inflammation. That's hard to say, right wrist. And then lastly, Colton Cowser and Jordan Westburg both have started rehab stints this week for the Orioles. I believe Cowser started yesterday and Westburg starts today, if I have that right. So they are both close to returning to a lineup that, boy, could they sure use an infusion of some real hitting talent right now. So obviously, again, there's not much to say on Blanco out for the year. Bichette seemingly getting better. Kwan, I don't think there's been a ton of updates there. But Cowser and Westburg, I think, is a really interesting one here, just as these are two, like, definitely viable fantasy starting options for your lineup. Westburg especially, who you've been without for a lot of the year, and especially with Westburg at a position like third base, given the nature of that position, I think could be a real boost to some teams.
As a person who drafted Jordan Westburg everywhere, I would like it to be a boost to our teams. And I drafted him exactly for that eligibility and the power that he showed. I mean, I thought, well, if I can get that at second base or third base, he has second base eligibility in some of my leagues. Like, that is perfect. Let's do it. Like, he was the guy. I feel like every year in fantasy, there's one guy that near the end of the season, I'm like, why didn't I go after this guy ever? Like, and Westburg last year was that guy. And so, then you fall in love a little bit with a player, and then you draft him everywhere, and then he's injured for the first 2 months of the year. But I think, and Cowser's equally as interesting. I mean, if they can come back and kind of resume what they were doing last year, not only is Baltimore going to get better, but fantasy teams, everyone, because I assume almost everyone held on to the two of them. So, they might be worth a buy low before they get back if you are looking for something, again, a little bit of power, and especially from an infielder spot. So I might go after him.
I think Cowser, especially talking about the power, I mean, last year he, in 500 at-bats, 24 home runs, also 9 stolen bases. I think there's room for the batting average to get better, too. It was 242 last year. Like, he had that reputation in college, which was a while ago at this point, but he had that reputation of being a better contact hitter than that. I think he is kind of the thump in the middle of the lineup that the Orioles are missing, especially with Gunnar, like, playing poorly and Adley playing poorly, too. I just think, like, Cowser sliding into that 4 or 5 spot. I think that will help more than people are giving credence to. And Westburg is just like a very good all-around player. Like I am very excited to have him back in the lineup as well as a fan. But I think I agree that like Westburg is the one that stands out to me as like I'm more excited about that return than Cowser. Like, and part of that is just the positional stuff, but part of it is like I think he's a better overall player. But I think Cowser's upside rest of season, if he is back and fully healthy, is like actually pretty significant. And most people hung on to him, but I would maybe be looking to trade for him if you could get him as like a part of a larger deal if you can include him. I think there's real power upside rest of season. Like, it would not surprise me. He's not going to reach 30 homers this year, but it wouldn't surprise me if he kind of spends the next 4 months at a 30 homer pace coming back. Just the type of hitter he is. And then, like you said, we both love Westburg for sure. For me, it was the two guys this year that I got like pretty much everywhere because of some of the positional versatility. You know, one of them obviously more proven than the other, but I just really like both players a lot. It was Jordan Westburg and Matt Shaw. And then one of them gets hurt and the other one gets sent down to the minors. So it was not the most fun April for investing heavily in those two guys. But yeah, I'm excited. I think Cowser and Westburg are going to make a difference for fantasy rosters coming back. Do you have any thoughts on Bichette? Just because I didn't pick him in the later segment, so we're not going to be really talking about him there. But like I said, hits the home run, has this lower back tightness. He's somebody that I really was drafting a lot of this year because I thought it was just a really good price on him where he was going. You know, he's age 27 season now. Like he's been good in the past, even if he was coming off that disastrous and injury shortened year last year. You know, kind of looking at just what he's done this year, like it's not like he's been setting the world on fire, but clearly better than last year at the very least. You know, what do you kind of make of him rest of the season?
Yeah, I had high hopes for him as well, and I like that his batting average has bounced back to, I mean, he's batting 277. So last year, that was actually the killer for me, that you kind of drafted him with the idea that he was going to hit for average and give you a little bit of power, but, you know, kind of hold down some of your counting stats. And this year, he seems to have bounced back a little bit harder with the batting average, and he scored 23 runs and the 5 homers is, you know, obviously we'd like it to be more, but he's also tried 6 stolen bases and made it 4 of them, so he's been doing a little bit more of the all-around stuff. So I was in on him mostly because I was so in on Vladdy, hoping we'd go the whole year without him getting a contract, and instead he got that, and then I was like, can I undraft him everywhere? But the two of them together, like, I feel like if he can just stay healthy, and that's just been the big problem. And low back tightness is always, that's one of those weird, like, I don't know. That's just one of the weird ones where you have no idea how long they're going to be out for.
Nobody ever used to have a bad back.
Ever. Like, no. Like, somebody says oblique, it's like, oh, that's going forever. But, like, a low back, it's like, I don't know where we're at. So...
all right, let's get into what I'm most looking forward to on this episode is Kelly Kirby's lessons learned so far in 2025. Now, you have not shared these with me, so I get to kind of react to them live. I don't even know how many you came up with, so this could be short, this could be long. We can take this as long as you want. I want you to dive into all your lessons learned so far this season, 2 months in.
Yeah. So just brace yourself. I'm going to go on for about an hour, but I'm keen. So one of the things that I got invited to participate in Tout Wars this year, which it was kind of like, imagine being invited to a party with like people, everyone that you've ever wanted to like meet, except they're inviting you to compete against them, and it was like the most intimidating thing that I've been a part of. I don't play a lot of 15-team roto leagues. I don't play a lot of 15-team roto leagues with, fantasy baseball geniuses. And the whole time I was just like, I feel like I'm a little bit out of my element here. And then I went and proved it. So in a 15-team roto league, one of the things I learned is it is actually important to draft saves. So even though there's turnover on the wire, like you got to lock down probably at least one that you know is going to get them, barring injury, of course. And instead what I did was I drafted a whole lot of handcuffs, and those have gone very poorly. Griffin Jacks right off the top of my head, not because I thought Duran was going to get injured, but he just usually has such solid numbers. And I was trying very hard to protect my ratios in those leagues. But that didn't work out so well. Because I also really liked Sandy Alcantara. And so those ratios are shot. But we'll talk about him in just a second. So yeah, that's one of the biggest like things that I took away from it, where it's just like I kept passing on relievers, and even in our league with Dan, I kept passing on relievers, and so I'm stuck with Hoffman, who's locking down saves, but he has a 6-something ERA, and he's just been a mess. So I hate drafting saves, but it's important in roto leagues. The second thing I learned.
Do you feel that way? Quickly, I want to ask. Do you feel that way? Like it's pronounced in a league like Tout Wars, but do you feel that way kind of going into next season in terms of like a 12-team league, or like in Roto, like you just want to lock somebody down? Because for me, like it's something that I want to be good at, but it's often hard to predict year to year where you're going to be good outside of the truly elites. But even with the truly elites, like I have Devin Williams everywhere this year. Thought I was locking in a top.
Right.
I thought I was locking in the number one guy. Honestly, like I could not have been more high on Devin Williams this season, and clearly that could not possibly have gone worse. So would you apply that same lesson to a more normal league?
Yeah, it's not as important, but again, in head-to-head, I will punt saves till the end of time. Like, I don't care in the least about that. But, like, in Roto, it's like, yeah, I still want at least someone that I know is going to start the year as a closer and presumably has that role kind of locked down. So even when a Devin Williams happens, like, it's like we started there. Like, on paper, statistically speaking, he should have been good. He should have been solid. But I didn't draft him because I don't like guys who broke their backs. But that scares me just a smidge. But yeah, I mean, like Duran out of Minnesota, like I have him a couple of places, but not in Roto, because it's like, well, he's gonna lock it down, and he has the job basically until someone takes it, or unless he gets injured. That's the type that I want to lock in on Roto. And so next year I would definitely aim to draft one or two, but for sure one. The key is to not feel like you're overpaying. And in auction leagues, I always feel like I'm overpaying for closers. So
yeah, I ended up our work kind of insiders league that we're in with FantasyPros. It's a really kind of an odd league because of the nature of our company. We actually have it set to end in mid-August, so we don't go the full season in this league, and that's something that you and myself and Mayor are all kind of pushing back against, but it's the way the league is set up, and we're not the commissioner, so we don't have control over it. And in that league, it's head-to-head categories, and I decided this year that I did want to go heavy on reliever because it's a daily league too. So I figure, if I can get 3 or 4 relievers I really like, and then I'll just rotate in starters every day, I'm going to be winning a lot of these pitching categories every week. And then as long as my hitting is just okay, I'll be winning most weeks. And I had Devin Williams was my big purchase there. So, I definitely overpaid for him. I was able to pick up like Kyle Finnegan. It's also a really shallow league. It's like 10 team because we have multiple like versions of the league and very short benches. So there are players on the waivers in that league that people would be shocked at, but it's just the way the league kind of is. So it's kind of a unique system, but that was one where I went most heavily on relievers, pretty much than I did in any other league this year. And again, because I picked Devin Williams as one of the guys that has burned me. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think the three of us have a chat that we like labeled "We Hate the Insiders Baseball" setup, like, because I feel like we talk about it a lot, and it will pick up now that we're getting into like what some people consider playoff season at our company.
We're basically
June.
in the equivalent of like August for most other teams. I mean, the playoffs will start in our league. The first day of the playoffs in this league is June 30th. I mean, it's insane.
It's like you can't even talk about it really because it's just nothing applies to anything else.
I always laugh too because the logic from the people who run the league, which, listen, being a commissioner is a thankless job. I get it. But like, I always laugh because they're like, well, people get really busy in August. It's like our busiest month of the year by a mile at the company, which I understand. But also I'm like, okay, so like 6 people might still be alive, even if we like didn't go all the way till September, but say we finished a couple weeks early, like not all 30 people in this league are going to be alive anymore. It's going to be like a half dozen. I think they can handle picking some daily lineups here and not, have it impact them too much. But I digress. What's your next lesson learned?
I'm like, I'm a guest on this show. Let's not get me fired. But so then the other thing I learned was I went into a couple drafts where I was like, I really want batting average, because I feel like batting average can, it can transfer to good counting stats. It can transfer to other things. And in the league that I did it the most specifically, my team is now collectively hitting 249, but they batted 202 during April. And I was like, well, that didn't work. So, so I think I'm going to go back to not necessarily ignoring batting average, but it should correct over the year. But that it was killer. It was just awful. And I have Soto in that league, so the whole time I was just like, help me.
Well, it's one of those things. It's kind of like pitching in general, or I always equate pitching to running backs in fantasy football. It's like those in the sense that batting average is something that I really want to be good at, but I find it very difficult to be good at a lot of the time. So I actually, in the league I'm in where I'm doing best this year, I'm running away with this. I mean, it's early, but I'm dominating in this Roto league, and it's like you keep 5, and I had just 5 great keepers, which went a long way. But in that league, I'm like 20 points higher than anybody else in batting average, and I think that's a real key to the reason why I'm running away with everything. To your point, like it can be a signal of how you're doing in some of the other categories as well, but it's a difficult one to get right.
Yep, for sure. And so, I mean, it might be worth trying, but I didn't do well on that whatsoever. So, yeah, my third lesson is do not trust Mike Trout, and by extension, do not trust Mike Mayer. He was so in on Trout every draft that we talked about. Every draft I was in with him. It was, nope, I'm going to do it. And it's amazing that he basically just replicated last year, where his April wasn't great in terms of like his average was terrible, but he produced, right? And then the same thing last year. He had 10 home runs in April or something, and then he's gone. And it's always that just vague, like he is the ultimate, you do not know what they're talking about with his injury. Like they could literally be like, he stubbed his toe, he's out for 2 months, and then sometimes it's like he broke his wrist, but he'll be back in 2 weeks. Like it's like they just you don't know how to do it. So I also just wanted to work in a chance to tell everyone not to trust Mike Mayer.
Well, that's been a big Mayer thing too in reacting to this injury, is like they're like, well, it's not that big of a deal, and yet there's no timeline for his, like, we're not concerned, but there's no timeline. He's like, what does this even mean? Like those two things do not square with one another. He's currently 124th in our rest of season consensus rankings, which, by the way, is definitely too high. Like I know he faced live pitching yesterday and ran the bases a bit, but like even when he comes back, like what are you gonna do? Be confident in him staying on the field? Of course not. So there's a reason I have him nowhere, and that's an L for Mayer for sure this year.
And so then I, because I like to make fun, but I'll also just come back with more of my L's apparently. I do want to take a preseason lap. My love of Hunter Brown. I don't think I ever stopped talking about him. I think every article where it was like, who are you going after? Who are your must-haves? What pitcher? Like I was like, Hunter Brown, Hunter Brown, Hunter Brown. So he's doing exactly what I thought he was going to do. He had a little bit of a blow-up start, I think, the other day, but he doesn't concern me. I adore him. So I want everyone to remember that, and then I want everyone to forget everything I said about Sandy Alcantara. Just entirely all across the board. I cannot believe how bad he looks. And like just none of his pitches are doing anything. There's no swinging. There's no, like, he's not fooling anybody with what is happening. And I don't know how he improves it. So he's a drop for me literally everywhere that I can, except for that 15-team Tout Wars league where there's really nothing. So I'm just like, I guess I'll just keep running him out there. But, yeah, so those are my two. That's my win and my loss, I think, from the pitching side.
We did an episode a couple weeks ago with Mayer and myself where we did like kind of taking the L's on some guys early on, and for me, like Devin Williams was a big one. I had a bold prediction before the year, and it's supposed to be bold, right? It wasn't supposed to be an obvious thing. Like, there's risk that bold predictions don't play out. That's the nature of them, but. One of my bold predictions was that Devin Williams would earn multiple Cy Young votes this year, down ballot, but he would be get votes. That will not be happening certainly. And then the other L I took was Adley Rutschman, where I just kind of like you, where it's like you were just describing with Alcantara, like I just can't believe how bad he looks. Like it like doesn't. And I know some of the expected stats for Adley are better than than the counting stats. But like, I mean, even just yesterday, and I know he was coming back from getting hit in the face with the ball. Like, I don't say this callously or like to make a joke. Like, he looked concussed. Like he looked like if a concussed player was trying to swing against major league pitching. I mean, his first 3 at bats, he had like 9 swings and made contact once, and it was a pop up. Like it was just strikeout. It just looked really bad. So those were my L's. So I can relate to kind of hoping people forget about those eventually.
Exactly. Like, have short memories, everyone. We talked about this just briefly, but another thing I learned, or at least had reinforced, is like you always want a rookie in their second stint in the majors. Matt Shaw has come back up, and I think I'll talk about him in the next segment. But the first one sometimes gets ugly. The second one, he tends to go way better because, like you said, they go down, they prove there's nothing else to do, and then they come back up. But since they'd already seen it, it's like I think there's a level of relaxation, level of adjustment that they are much more comfortable with. And I mean, there's a learning curve, right? There's a learning curve when you join any new company. And I think we just have to take that in consideration with rookies for sure. So that's that lesson. The next one is really it's sort of a story. Last weekend, I went to a winery in Wisconsin because I'm right on the border, and I walked in, and it was a kind of a birthday gathering for someone, so there were people there I didn't know, and one of the people was wearing a Tigers jersey in Wisconsin at a winery, and I was like, what in the hell is that? And all I could see was the last number was 5, and so I'm like, okay, maybe a baseball fan. So I'm like, cool. I'm like, are you wearing a Verlander jersey? And she was like, no. She's like, it's a Brandon Inge jersey. And I'm like, you are kidding. I'm like, okay. And so like that was my it's important to be open to all fandoms, and people get they fall in love with certain players for certain reasons. This is also my opportunity to tell everyone that Justin Verlander is washed, and you don't have to try to keep him on your teams. That's how I brought that back around.
Let me ask you this, Kelly. What is your most obscure jersey and or jersey that you own?
You want to go with ever owned, because that's way easier. Like,
sure.
Okay, yeah. Like I owned a Nick Punto jersey. For the Twins, I loved him. I don't know why. I mean, I have no idea. I just thought he was just my favorite player for a little while, so I owned a Punto shirt. And I was like, and I got the same look that I probably gave this person with the Inge jersey.
Yeah. I've got a Ramon Hernandez Orioles jersey from a number of years ago. I can't fit in it anymore, but I still own it, I think. And then I have for jersey, for whatever reason, my college roommate just thought it would be funny to own an Oakland Athletics Jack Cust jersey. And so we had that hanging in our college dorm. And then when we moved out, he was like, I don't really want this anymore. Do you want it? I was like, sure. So I just have this Cust jersey in my house for some reason.
I remember another one with Cubs. I was watching a Cubs game with my wife, and we were like, if Jeremy Burnitz gets a hit here, I will buy his jersey. And he like walked off a homer, and she looked at me and she's like, well, order it.
Yeah, you have to. You can't back out.
Yeah, and then the T fell off, so then she had her Bernie Z jersey, which we laughed at forever. So, the next two, speaking of the Cubs, always remember that whoever the Cubs closer is, they are only currently that closer. Go pick them up, and then they will start blowing saves. And then the Cubs have ADD when it comes to trying to figure out a bullpen. If Valencia is it, I would love that. But in my entire Cubs fandom, I can remember the amount of times we had a closer that I was like, that's our closer. So just beware of that for fantasy. And then the last one is, I would like to publicly apologize to Pete Crow-Armstrong. I literally, in 2 different leagues, I was like, I can't believe that I'm going to get stuck with him. Like, I was just like, fine, I'll just take Pete Crow-Armstrong. In a league I'm in with my dad, he drafted him. I made fun of him because I'm like, you can't draft him there. Like, I'm like, that is like 14 rounds too early, blah, blah, blah. And I've gotten to talk to my dad a lot more this season because I feel like he wants to call me like every time he does anything good. And he's got 15 homers and 15 steals. So it's a fair amount. But so those are the lessons I've learned so far.
I told Nair this recently because I had Pete Crow-Armstrong as a sell high. Not that I think he's going to be terrible, but just like, get a stud if you can. And in one of my leagues, it's a 2-catcher roto league, and there's some keeper elements at play. And Cal Raleigh is a very, very good keeper value, even aside from the fact that he's a great catcher to have in a 2-catcher league. He's also a good keeper value. And he got traded for PCA earlier this year.
Wow.
And the trade almost got vetoed because everybody was like, this is insane to give up Cal Raleigh for only this. And now it almost looks like they both have been good to varying degrees, but like it almost looks like the reverse. Like, holy cow, you got Crow-Armstrong for just a catcher. Like, I mean, it's funny how quickly that can be, kind of painted in a different way, in a different light, just a month later, really.
Yeah, I mean, and that's it's a good story to kind of remember why you don't veto trades unless they're they have to be so lopsided and like but if it's like, if I value this guy like this, like, who are you to tell me not to? Again, with the exceptions.
The funny thing is the manager that did that quickly is really, really incompetent. He's new to our league, and like I actually can't even describe to you how bad his draft was.
Is it Mayor?
No. It was like, I think he took Christian Campbell. So there's 5 keepers for each team. So 50 players are off the board. But if you were drafting the first 2 rounds, you can't be kept. So there are studs available. Plus, you can only keep 5 guys. So like I had to throw back like Devers and Bregman and like guys like that. Like there were players available plus those first 2 round studs. And he took Roki Sasaki with the first overall pick ahead of like Mookie Betts and like a bunch of other people. He took Christian Campbell in the 3rd round, again ahead of like all these great, like very good players still on the board. And that was like the entire draft. Like I was like, this guy seems very incompetent at this. And so then he was also the one making the trade, and we were like, okay, like he's clearly somebody's taking advantage of because he doesn't know what he's doing. But this one worked out for him. So he now has Pete Crow-Armstrong as a great keeper moving forward.
For sure. And I was also just gonna say, I want in the comments people to drop their most obscure jersey.
Yes.
And a story about why you own it would be even better. But
yes,
because I love that conversation. Ones. So
yeah, maybe we can. I don't want to promise this, but we'll ask if we can hook up the most obscure one we find with something like a premium subscription or something like that. No promises. Do it just for fun and for the conversation, but we'll ask to see if we can get that approved as well too. So give us your best, most obscure jerseys and or jerseys. We'll go ahead and wrap up rounding the bases there. We will be around for part 2 and part 3, where we're going to talk about some buys and sells and waiver guys. And then of course part 3 will be the streaming pitchers and our 2-start pitcher competition. For Kelly, I'm Ryan Wormeli for part 1. Thanks for tuning in. Stick around for the next episode.